Hello, I'm Dr. Court Coghill. Here at the FIAC Institute, we always value the diversity of thought. So we are working to bring people across the spectrum with interesting insight and share their thoughts as it relates to enterprise architecture. We hope you enjoy this EA Short Talk. This session, we talk with Dr. Peter Aiken. Peter is an acknowledged data management authority. He is an associate professor of information systems at the Virginia Commonwealth University, past president of the International Data Management Association, and associate director of the MIT International Society of Chief Data Officers. As a practicing data consultant, professor, author, and researcher, he has studied data management for more than 30 years. We caught up with Peter to collect his thoughts on enterprise architecture and its value to managing complexity and change. So, Peter, really appreciate you spending some time with us and kind of sharing your insight and knowledge. One of the interesting things is, as a practitioner, in the field of data governance, the application, practical applications of data, you also work on the university side. And so you have some very, very interesting insight about some of the challenges we have with educating practitioners today. Could you take a moment and talk a little bit about that?
Sure, and a pleasure to be with you, Cord, as always. I really enjoy these conversations that we have. Not just as a person who dabbles in the university, my primary allegiance is to Virginia Commonwealth University, who have agreed to give me a job for life. So that's kind of I'm the pig rather than the chicken, if that were the case. But hats off to VCU for allowing me to express the opinions that I do. And we do have a problem. It's not a VCU-specific problem. It's an industry problem, and that's why I think why we went to the practitioner sort of aspect of this. Just consider for a brief moment that we take a lot of time and effort to train young people, to help practitioners become certified, to do all sorts of things by training them how to build new stuff, and exclusively how to build new stuff. Most of the time, however, they are going to be placed on projects where they're working on existing stuff. Some people call it old. It's all old. The minute it's in production either way, so it doesn't really matter what's going on there. But they don't have a good skill set match when they do this. And they don't have a good set of expectations, and consequently, our process is prolonged. And that really does lead us to ask the question: if we spend 20% of our dollars building new stuff in IT, and 80% of our dollars in IT fixing stuff that's already there, shouldn't we devote at least a portion of the curriculum, or maybe even a majority of the curriculum, to educating people how to work with existing systems? And the tie there is very clear. It's enterprise architecture, because the things that are in the existing systems that you need to understand, that can in many cases be quickly and easily deciphered and made useful, are the pieces that will tell you what is happening in the system, because nothing in a system is going to be useful unless it is understood. And if it's not documented, it can't be understood by a wider group of people. So that's, in a nutshell, if you will, my basis for enterprise architecture. And yet that term very rarely comes up in most curriculums. I'm speaking broadly, but there are some good specializations. But very broadly, this is not concepts that they get.
To another question, and that is, the pitfalls of hype cycles. We see the rise of a certain discipline or functionality, or certain things are terms of art or in favor. What are your thoughts on this?
Well, the term of art is a fun one as well. The nice part about the hype cycle most people aren't aware is that Lady Ada Lovelace is the one who should be given credit for the basis for it, because she has in her writings a very descriptive term that sounds like Gartner took it straight off of her writings there. It says, when one considers something new, one generally sees its good characteristics, and then after we've looked at it for a bit, we find it's not quite as good as we thought. So it goes up and then it goes down, and the answer is in the middle somewhere, and that's, of course, the nature of the Gartner hype cycle. But for some reason in IT, we have kept delivering it over and over again. And the reason we talk about it quite a bit is because the problems we're facing in large, complex systems, of which data is certainly one, but enterprise systems are a class of, is that they require professional administration to make up for past neglect. And I love that phrase, even though I did write it myself. It really does encompass what's in there. There's a class of knowledge and skills that we need to develop, and certainly can use more of them worldwide, that are required to get us out of some of the messes we have dug ourselves into, because there's just so much disinterest in these topics that we have built a legacy of poorly designed, poorly engineered systems that are hard to maintain. And the virtual assurance of that fact is that if you look at any packaged software, it has the original data model, because if you're going to change that enterprise architecture component, you will have to change all of the components surrounding it, and that's a lot of work. Mm-hmm. And so they will add on tables always, but they will never go back and change any of the existing things that are in there.
All right, interesting. So how do you see enterprise architecture kind of fitting into kind of helping to combat the impact of that hype cycle approach or effect?
So one of the problems we've had is we use lots and lots of terms where we're talking about things that are simply indecipherable. Big data. Nobody still has a definition of what that means. Anyway, the key is that we don't have objective definitions for this. And if you don't have an objective definition, it's really hard to tell that something has actually gotten better or worse. My first job in the Defense Department was working in their enterprise architecture systems division to try and help them address some of these precise problems. They weren't able to exert management control, but they weren't able to exert management control because they didn't have good architecture control over what was happening. They had 37 separate, disparate architectures, all of which tried to support the mission in one form or another, but had not been grown in an implemented plan, didn't happen to work together, and consequently, they were unable to manage the situation that they were in, given that type of a process. Enterprise architecture is the thing that gives you the baseline. So one of the things you can say is, how many transactions does the system process currently? Right? If it's 1,000 and you're designing it to be capable of processing 100,000, you have a different class of architectural requirements on your hands than you have with the original one, and consequently need to address things from a very much more fundamental perspective than just faster hardware and software. Just one example, Cord.
Mm-hmm. I appreciate it. Thank you so much, Peter.
Thank you, Cord.
All right. We hope you found this EA Short Talk interesting, and if so, consider giving us a thumbs up or subscribing. Learn more about our courses and offerings at www.fiacinstitute.org.